Alright, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Reality. Now, in today's edition, we're going to be talking about the 4 primary targets to take virtually anyone out of a fight. We're talking eyes, throat, groin, and knees. If I poke somebody in the eyes, they cannot see, they cannot continue to fight, they are fucked at that point. I can pretty much do whatever I want to do to them at that point with total impunity. If I crush somebody's windpipe and I bust their throat out, they cannot breathe, they cannot continue to fight. They might be on borrowed time. If I bust somebody's balls with maybe a knee strike, or maybe I kick them, they're going to be incapacitated, writhing on the ground in crippling agony, provided I hit them with enough speed, power, and follow through. Now, if I smash somebody's kneecaps, at that point, their balance is going to be severely hindered and compromised to a point where they might have a smashed kneecap, a hyperextended knee. They might be crippled up, again, in agonizing pain on the ground. That is ground zero, level zero. That is the ultimate reality when it comes to Jeet Kune Do and all these other martial arts. So, what I'm getting at here is these 4 primary targets are equalizers that are not legal in sport martial arts. Reason being is because they work on anyone, and they are so highly effective. Not to mention that they will produce a long-lasting, if not permanent, traumatic injury. That is the whole purpose of this, is so that you guys can get grounded in this ultimate reality here and structure your training around this. You need to be training your eye jabs from day one. If you're an instructor, the first thing you need to show somebody is an effective eye strike, a gouge, a poke to the eyes, a finger flick, a spear hand to the eyes, etc. That's number 1. That'll take anyone out of a fight, regardless of size. It's an instant, incapacitating fight ender that will cause a traumatic injury to a point where that person can no longer continue. And even if they could, they would not want to, because they won't want that to happen again. I can tell you from experience of being poked in the eyes accidentally in training, even just accidentally, it's blinding. You're going to see silver, a bright silver light, and then you will be blinded. There's no way at that point that you can continue to fight. You cannot see. Your nervous system is compromised. It's over. Same thing if you get kicked in the groin. You're going to be in excruciating pain. I can assure you of that. Now, we're looking at combinations of that. Your typical fight might be a poke to the eyes and a kick in the dick. And that person is going to be so overwhelmed, and they're going to be laying on the ground, critically paralyzed and in agonizing shock. I can guarantee you that. You know, if you don't believe me, you know, buyer beware, try it. But this is why your Jeet Kune Do is so effective. By putting your stronger, more accurate side in front, you are maximizing within a 90 percentile your ability to land a traumatic, critical strike to a vulnerable target area, again, such as the eyes, throat, groin, and knees. Now, you might punch somebody in the face and then maybe smash their kneecap and poke them in the eyes. You might stomp them in the knee and then poke them in the eyes. You might kick this person in the knee and then jam him in the throat with some kind of a crushing, whining throat shot, and they are done. You might kick somebody in the groin and then maybe smash their kneecap with a side stomp kick, maybe a cross stomp, a front stomp, and they're done at that point. They're not going to be able to continue. You might feint on a high line and kick someone in the groin. You see where I'm going with this? We're talking like one or two, and it's over. You might kick somebody in the groin, and they're already going down by the point where you throw that eye jab, to the point where that eye jab is just insurance, and it might even miss, but they're already on their way to the ground. Those are the types of experiences that I've had in real street fighting, where I've had to protect myself from, violent assault. And again, it's almost never one-on-one, so you want to get it over quick. And if you are facing multiple assailants, you want to critically injure that first guy as quickly and rapidly as possible, to the point where you're not only ready to deal with those other guys, but you're making an example out of that guy. That if they want to continue, that's what's going to happen to them next. Now, there are other tactics. There are other tools that you're going to need in your toolbox if these critical fight-ending strikes to these vulnerable target areas do not work. You're going to need to develop, an arsenal of kicking and punching, like basic kickboxing. Okay? You're going to need to learn the trapping, the clinch, the infighting, the grappling, the weapons work with the sticks and knives, etc. If you want to be well-rounded. So, piggybacking off my flow, you're going to want to develop these fight-ending skills, like immediately in your training, with a sense of urgency, to a point where within your first 6 months, you've done tens of thousands of eye jabs, tens of thousands of shots, punches, and throat chops, winding throat shots, strikes to the groin, kicks, stomps to the knees, etc. To the point where, other than just throwing a jab cross combination punch and every now and then maybe including, a jab cross hook, you want to work on these foundational skills pretty much almost to exclusion in your first 6 months, to a point where you are progressively retraining your reflexive response in your nervous system, to a point where you can pull this stuff off against virtually anybody. Okay? Now, there's a reason why I prioritize this kind of training, because it's so effective. You look at any UFC fight or kickboxing match where somebody's accidentally poked in the eyes, not even meaning to do it, and you can see it causes an immediate paralyzing effect. Same thing akimbo if they are kicked in the groin. Okay, these guys are instantaneously doubled over in pain from an accidental kick to the groin. and they're wearing a groin protector. Okay? Same thing. If they're kicked in the knee with some kind of like a projecting side kick, a side stomp, some kind of a cross stomp, like a jamming kick, that knee is going to be hyperextended, and they're going to have their mobility is instantaneously compromised to a point where, again, they may be on the ground in crippling, agonizing pain with a traumatic injury that's going to require a surgery to repair. Same thing if you poke somebody in the eyes. You could fully detach that retina very easily. Your fingernail can scratch their cornea. You may even permanently blind somebody with an eye poke, not even meaning to. Which is why I recommend when you guys are doing this and you're training with your training partner, make sure you are wearing some kind of protective eye gear, like some kind of thick goggles. Swimming goggles are good. Safety glasses are okay because you can take them on and off. But just be aware they fog up. There are different ways that you guys can train this effectively. Okay? Handheld devices, the wooden dummy, freestanding eye jab device, etc. But again, not to beat a dead horse, but there are still people out there that are arguing the efficacy of striking somebody in the eyes, the throat, the groin, and the knees. And again, you guys just don't seem to understand, probably because you have a lack of experience and you just haven't done it. And again, I can assure you in the sense that most of the fights that I have had, a direct strike to the groin ends it almost immediately. There might be like a delayed effect for like a few seconds, but trust and believe, if I land a direct nut shot, if I bust her balls with a kick or a knee shot, sometimes even a backhand flick, they're going down. They're going down. It's that simple. If I poke somebody in the eyes, trust me, they're going down. It doesn't matter how good of a boxer, a kickboxer, a grappler, a karate man they are at that point. If they are poked in the eyes or kicked in the groin directly, it's over. Almost immediately. They might struggle for a few seconds, but at that point I can pretty much walk away and get back in my car and drive away. If I have to, I may have to continue if there's multiple assailants, and I might have to finish this guy off so he doesn't get back up. But that's reality there, guys. Always assume that these people are armed and they're not alone. So, again, a lot of you guys are training sport technique and trying to adapt it to street self-protection, or what I now refer to as self-preservation, because that's really what it is. It's about survival at that point if you have to poke someone in the eyes. We're not talking about an ego fight or a mutual combat here. This is something that you're forced into that you want no part of, and maybe you were surprise attacked. Well, at that point, your life is on the line. You have to immediately cut out all the bullshit and do what works. So, again, a lot of you guys are going to be like, oh, well, what if this, what if that? I'm telling you right now, if you're poked in the eyes, you're done. Irregardless of who you are and how much training you have. That is the great equalizer. If you take a direct shot to the groin, you're done. You're done. Even something like an ungloved, trained straight punch to the face, you're affecting their ability to breathe. You're affecting their ability to see. That nose is going to be leaking. Okay, their teeth might be knocked out. They can't see. Their vision is blurry. They're on Queer Street. They're dizzy. You guys that are training with gloves, again, hate to break it to you, but you guys are ingraining a lot of bad habits, that if you do it too long, it's going to be irreversible. You need to start training empty-handed from the get. So, hope this helps. And that was the Jeet Kune Do episode of Reality.